Hello friend, welcome to another one of our videos. I'm Amanda with AB Adventures, and today we will be covering the history of the Beauty and the Beast live on stage show in Walt Disney World's Hollywood Studios. I was somewhat inspired by this after doing quite a bit of research for our previous video on Belle's costume within the parks over years and years of theme parks since the movies released in 1991. And if you haven't seen that, definitely go check it out. But for now, stick around here because we are going to be uncovering the history and changes of the longest running stage show in theme park history. So let's get started here. Now, the Beauty and the Beast live on stage show has been presented since opening day in 1991, with the exception of the closures caused by the pandemic in 2020, in which case it was replaced by Disney Society Orchestra and Friends. However, it was just recently announced that it will be making a return to Hollywood Studios on August 15th, 2021, and this story has been performed multiple times all over the world in the Disney parks, most notably in Disneyland and Disneyland Paris in the past years. However, I will only be taking a look at the version in Walt Disney World at Hollywood Studios, though understandably Disney created those other versions as well. They are amazing, but we're just going to focus right here. The original version of the stage show opened on November 22nd, 1991 in Hollywood Studios, the same day that the film was released. Its host theater was the Theater of the Stars right on Sunset Boulevard. However, at the time of its opening, Sunset Boulevard had not yet been built. Now, if you're familiar with the modern version of the show, you will find this very interesting. The original opening number was actually Be Our Guest, where all the enchanted pieces from the castle welcomed you as the audience to their show. A few things that I want to point out here are the costumes, especially the Mrs. Potts, who looks fairly cheerful and light here. We're going to see a little bit different later, but one of the memorable on-stage tricks is the opera singer disguised as the Sunday. Another thing in the scene is the dancing, like wine bottles and those kinds of things on the bookshelves in the back. You probably may not be able to notice right here, but they are very out of sync with the music. But that is one thing that I want to note as we look forward. So then, after that, Belle's song was performed next with Gaston's song, interjecting it. So Gaston would actually enter the stage, and then there would be a couple lines from his song, and then it would go back to the rest of the show. So a little bit out of order, but that flowed for them at the time. They were definitely trying to make it much more condensed version. So the scene ended pretty abruptly, with the next scene starting with Belle already in the castle. So it skips a huge portion of the story without much bridge between the two parts, and honestly I find it a little bit shocking how quickly that transition is, especially with the Beast. His lines have him just growling really loudly. It's just very shocking. So anyway, that happens to the next scene, and next up is the song Something There. Now, this specific number really didn't have a lot of show with it. It was really just the two of them, and then Lumiere and Cogsworth, Mrs. Potts, Chip in the background, and that was really it. In terms of lighting, it just wasn't very brightly lit. There wasn't a lot of choreography going on or anything like that. It was just a very simple scene. Very quickly after this, we transition over into the mob song with Gaston, and also with bats dancing at the Bat Ballet, and random fire. Yeah, one little spark. Oops, wrong reference. Anyway, we got one little poof of fire, and that's it. You never see the fire again. The whole show, just here. Weird. So then we have arrived at quite possibly the scene that changed the most over the years. In the original, though, the transformation scene of the Beast mostly has him hidden behind this heaping cloak. So the actor would sometimes move it up and down and have it go with the lines, and it was the best that they could do with the directions that they had, but it was honestly kind of just a bit awkward with the lines that they had to deliver off to do a quick 30-second Did I mention 30-second change to meet the prince at the top of the stairs? So here they would dance alone together for a bit, and then they would be joined by the cast. And the dance scene was drawn out a bit. Belle and the Beast would meet at the top of the stairs for a bit before returning to the stage to carry out the last of Tale as Old as Time together with the whole cast. Now, on opening day, they did have the costume Beast walk down with Belle. That was the last time I've ever seen this. Please let me know if you've ever seen it another time. My favorite part about this, though, was the doves that would be released at the end. It's such a special touch. I wish that they still had it. So cool. Okay, so now that you've seen kind of an overview of the whole first show and how it happened, how it was written out, let's take a closer look at this whole fight scene and transformation scene, because those are the ones that change the most. So first, notice the backdrop, because that is going to change a lot later. And the backdrop is honestly kind of odd to me, because while it is pretty, it's beautiful, that means that this whole scene is taking place far away from the castle. Anyway, maybe I'm getting too detailed, but it's far. Okay, to the fight scene. Gaston confronted the Beast, and they had this very quick tussle, back and forth, also awkward. Belle comes in and ushers the Beast away. Note that she covers his head with his cloak. She flips that over so his whole head is covered. And when Gaston goes in to give one more blow, Belle pushes him away with quite the dramatic scream. As awkward as it was, it did have a purpose, and that was misdirection. By drawing attention to herself, the audience watches Belle push Gaston away. So your eyes are focused on her rather than on the Beast. And honestly, she's very active in the scene, which I think is kind of cool. This allows enough time for the costumed Beast to switch actors out for the prince. So he scoots out from backstage and lands right on the ground. And when he stands on his feet, you can see he's either got paws or you can see his pants sticking out, something like that. It just kind of associates in your head that this is the Beast, even though they've already switched actors. But then off comes the cloak, and there's the prince dressed in his formal suit. And can I mention the 30-second change again? I have been told that this is a magic of a substance known as Velcro. Lots of Velcro. Now, this method of changing the two actors was used for years, and with it being performed so many times, you can see some of the tricks for the illusion that just kind of slipped out in different performances over the years. So you can see where when he takes his cloak off, the lining on the inside that made it stiff enough to kind of hunch over his back and give him room to be able to change, take the paws off, all the things. You can see the cast member that goes by and picks up his cloak on the way out. All these different things coming together, you can see that through the different performances that happened over years and years and years. So in 1993, the Theater of the Stars was moved in September as they were building Sunset Boulevard at the time. So the show was temporarily moved to the Premier Theater, and it reopened in July 1994 in the new rebuilt Theater of the Stars. That's all you really need to know about this time, so moving on. In 2001, the performance actually had the most dramatic changes yet, and up until now, it had been, the little projection differences or maybe entrances that were a tad different. The bookshelves progressively getting a little bit more in sync with the music, the rows being added in the background during the Something There scene. Again, little things. So it was a huge thing when the second version of the show debuted in March 2001 and entirely changed the structure of how this story was told. And honestly, it was a bit more cohesively, in my opinion, than the previous version. So it actually started out with the prologue, and there was a narrator sharing the story of what was to come, and the Enchantress was actually brought in as a dancer and actress into this scene. So you get to see a whole lot more than what you saw before, much more visualization of what is happening, and it follows the story a lot more from the film. So anyway, you have the prologue, and then Belle is also interjected by Gaston just as before, but then there's the reprise afterward. And that's really cool because it does set up her desire for something more, for adventure, for all the things that we know Belle is. You can see that a little bit more because that reprise is interjected in there. And then Be Our Guest got moved to this point in the story, which also follows the movie a little bit better too. You can see a lot of the choreography is the same. The costumes are very similar, even if they may have gotten, you know, a little bit nicer jazzing up or anything. It's not noticeable. You know, it's just enough that it feels very much the same. One of the big things though is the costume of Mrs. Potts. I find this one to be the most random change because, as you can see from opening day, she had this very light look about her, and I don't think it was just the lighting. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you know anything, please tell me. It just looks like they're completely different costumes. So anyway, all of that to say, I think that that changed a little bit over the years, but for the most part, the costumes have stayed the same. Next up, we have Something There. Again, not much has changed with this, but the mob song after. We have finally removed the bat scene, and it makes me so happy because that was the most random thing, and it was so long too. So this just helps the story move along a whole lot faster. It allows, by taking out that scene, it allows time for things like the Belle reprise at the beginning and the prologue at the beginning. So we've got all of that, and then we get to this fight scene and the transformation scene that really also changed a whole lot more from the original. In this version, the Beast goes into his whole fight with Gaston, and he gets injured and falls down all on stage. You see it all, and he also dies on stage as well. So if that's what you can call, I guess he dies and then comes back to life. I don't know whether he dies or not. He lays very still, and there is a whole transformation scene that happens, and what happens here is that the enchantress actually comes out, and these two men hold a tapestry that actually has the actor of the prince behind it. They walk him over and then do a switch, and there you go, there's the prince. And so this is how this whole scene comes into play, but the difference here is that the prince is actually in his more tattered clothes rather than the full suit from before. So there's a little bit of that. It feels like the scene from the movie again. Like, I keep going back to that, but it just feels a little bit more familiar. And there's this very quiet moment between the two of them. They get to dance together before anybody else has entered the stage, which is also really special and quiet. And I really, really like that. So anyway, they dance together, and then they're again ushered by the two men with the tapestry up to the top of the stairs, and then they leave, and they have 1 minute to do their change while the rest of the cast comes back to dance. And there is something to watch while you're waiting, and you're kind of distracted. You don't really realize that they are changing the back, and then they come out. And at this point from the old one, this would have been when Beauty and the Beast went up to the top of the stairs. Like, they would dance together and then go up to the top of the stairs and just stand there for a long time, and then they would come back down. So this eliminates all of that as well. It's not awkward. Nothing feels weird. You're not just watching them standing there for a very, very long time. So everything flows a whole lot better. That is the gist of the whole transformation that happened in 2001, where this whole stage show was completely reworked. And since then, they've had a few refurbishments done in 2004, 2013, and 2019. Nothing too major was altered during this time, regardless of how many people were asking for things to be altered during this time. The most prominent thing that I've noticed was actually Belle's dress, which we covered in a previous video. I've mentioned that before. A few of the details were changed on her dress, most notably the lace at the sleeves, but you can catch that on our other video. Then, as I said, this show has been closed since March of 2020. It has been a very, very long time since guests have been able to experience this show that has been the longest running of any theme park stage show. People have very much missed it, even with all of the cries for change, for something new, for an update of some sort, and we will just see if Disney does come back with an update at all since this shutdown, or if they come back with the feeling of familiar and nostalgia. So we will see that on August 15th of this year. Let me know in the comments if you are excited to see this show back on the stage again, regardless of an update or no update. I would love to hear what you guys think, and I would love to hear what you thought about this video. If there's anything that you learned, if there's any new, thank you guys so much. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see more videos like this, because we do quite a few of them. I am a big history nerd. I love getting into this stuff, so be sure that there will be more coming as well. Thank you guys again, and we will see you on the flip-flop.